back to Winning Isn't Easy. Do you qualify for your ERISA disability benefits because of hidradenitis suppurativa, also known as HS? Now, if you've purchased a disability insurance policy on your own, called an individual disability policy, or you have your coverage through your employer, I have to tell you that HS might make you eligible for your benefits, but it can be a tough road to follow in the disability claims process. I want to talk with you about what a disability carrier or a disability plan doesn't understand. They tend to take a one-size-fits-all approach, and they fail to recognize the multiple system involvement, the cycles of infections, flares, and remissions. And they don't really take into consideration the complications associated with the disease, the pain, and the multifactorial approach to treatment. They just see it as a generic dermatological issue. Now, treatment for HS can include long-term use of antibiotics, steroid injections into the sores to reduce the inflammation and swelling, hormonal therapy, biologics like Humira, and pain medication. They don't necessarily understand the regimen of the treatment and, of course, the cycle of the treatment as you might have flares. What I find is that it's not unusual for someone who has HS to get multiple forms of treatment, including both medication and surgery. Surgery is often recommended to deal with the tunnels, and that can include procedures to uncover the tunnels. It can involve surgery to remove the bumps. It can involve surgery to excise impacted skin. So there's different types of surgery, and the nature and frequency of these surgeries can be unpredictable. What does that mean? Well, that means potential visits to plastic surgeons, colorectal surgeons, and even gastroenterologists. They don't get the systemic involvement of this disease. They just think it's kind of limited to the skin, and in fact, it's not. They also don't really appreciate the required frequency of skin care and how long it takes on a daily basis to just do basic skin care. They don't necessarily understand the impact of diet on flares, and they think, well, you can control it by just eating certain things. Well, that's not necessarily true. And they certainly don't appreciate the persistent pain that accompanies HS. And remember, HS impacts different parts of your body. It's normally where body parts rub. So armpits, behind your knees, on your buttocks, under your breasts. And that means that basic movement, basic things like reaching, like sitting, can really cause significant pain. The sores often drain pus with a strong odor, and that obviously can be problematic for lots of reasons, but that involves bandaging and wound care cleaning. And of course, ultimately, you have pain that can interfere with sleep, your clothing choices, and again, as I've said, even minimal physical activity can cause an increase in not only symptoms, but pain. All of these challenges make it really difficult to work, and they don't seem to get that. And again, unfortunately, I find that clients who have HS have depression and anxiety that can impact a person's functionality. I mean, obviously, you don't want to be going out. You don't necessarily want to be around the public. You don't want to be around coworkers. You don't want to be in a situation where you can be subject to stares, questions, comments, and rude comments about why you're even in the workplace. I will tell you, though, that many times disability carriers or plans will use these legitimate issues of depression or anxiety to try to limit the payment of benefits to just 2 years because of the mental and nervous and policy or plan limitations. As I went through this sort of laundry list of what they don't get, it kind of leads us to some of the common defenses that are raised by disability carriers or plans. What they may say is, oh, there's a lack of objective basis for the diagnosis. Now, I think that's a bit stupid because obviously you can see at least the external involvement. But obviously HS can impact your organs, and they don't necessarily get that. So they are going to be looking for diagnostic studies or testing that show the involvement of HS. Secondly, they may say, well, there's a lack of objective basis of your restrictions and limitations. If that's coming along in the denial, what I like to do is to do some videotaping of a person's average day so that the disability carrier plan can see what this all looks like. And in the right case, even have a functional capacity evaluation, which is a test of your ability to sit, stand, walk, stoop, and bend. I want the FCE provider to take photos of your body and have them show what problems you have as you may reach or as you may try to sit. And I want them to try to connect the two and ultimately have those restrictions and limitations endorsed by your physician. I find that this objective proof, photos, videos, the FCE can be really key if the disability carrier is looking for a reason to deny a claim on the basis of there's no objective basis for the restrictions and limitations. The other defense is the application of subjective medical condition limitations. There are policies, and not all policies or plans have this, that may have a term that says subjective medical condition limitations. And you'll see a whole laundry list of things from fibromyalgia to pain to fatigue to skin lesions that are quote unquote considered to be subjective based on the language in the policy or plan. One of the first things you need to do is to get out that policy or plan and understand, are there any subjective medical conditions and limitations? And if so, how are you going to get around that in terms of objective proof that will address some of these subjective complaints? And one of the favorite defenses, of course, is the mental nervous policy limitation provision that we see. And that is, I think, a significant problem. They come in two flavors. There is the Monty Python one, which is caused and contributed to, or the other one is the plain one, which is just disability is caused by. Now, I think that it is crucial that you understand that policy term because we need to make sure that your doctor is addressing that while you may be depressed or have psychological symptoms, that they are not contributing to your disability, that you are disabled because of the symptoms that you have that are objectively proven. Now, we need to remember that there is no gold standard test for HS, and that can, as I said, be a problem. But one of the ways I think we really get around that is to tell your doctor about all your symptoms, including the frequency and nature of your sores, your skin care routine, and how the pain impacts your ability to function, with a description of problems with standing, walking, sitting, lifting, carrying, stooping, climbing. And I think a daily photo log is really important, together with the video that I discussed. I think each one of these techniques, if you will, can be used to successfully overcome a claims denial. But there is one big problem that I see in these types of cases, and that is sometimes disability carriers will say, hey, there's a lack of objective basis for restrictions and limitations during periods of remission. They're going to say, in a period of remission, you don't have any limitations, and they will evaluate the HS as a one-size-fits-all. They'll assess the severity of your symptoms, but conveniently ignore, or I guess not ignore, really focus, the opposite, on the lack of symptoms during quote-unquote regular appearances of HS. So they will minimize the intensity, persistence, and limitations of your condition when you are not having a flare-up, okay? So if you're not having a flare-up, it's there. It's not all that disabling. You ought to be able to work. By the way, you had a flare-up, but that's just a temporary flare-up. And by the way, once you recover, you should be able to work. So you can see why it's really important that you are giving a consistent history of the nature of your symptoms and functionality, and that you're keeping a diary and a photo log to document your status. As these episodes become more frequent or intense or unpredictable, it obviously can make it more difficult to work, and that diary is going to document the progression. The other thing that we need to recall, as I've said, is the terms of the policy, and I can't emphasize that enough. It is often rare for HS claims to be approved and paid through the full benefit period of time, in part because of all the things that I've just talked about. And you need to be really cognizant of this flare-up argument. If you're not having a flare-up, you can work. Okay, yeah, you're having a flare-up, but it's temporary and you can recover. Please make sure that your medical records are documenting why your condition is not transient or temporary. Winning your claim does require medical records that clearly document the nature, severity, and frequency of your attacks and your ability to function, including your ability to maintain pace and absenteeism. Remember, if your claim is denied, you're only going to have 180 days in which to file an appeal in an ERISA case, and that appeal is the trial of your case. So you don't want to fool around. If your claim has been denied, you need to immediately hire an experienced ERISA HS attorney. Got it? Let's take a break.
Are you a professional with questions about your individual disability policy? You need the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. This book gives you a comprehensive understanding of your disability policy, with tips and to-dos that will assist you in submitting a winning disability application. This is one you don't want to miss. For the next 24 hours, we're giving away free copies of the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. Order yours today at disabilityclaimsforprofessionals.com.